So,
Yeah, I think
and
she's in Luke on filtering.
and that
Right,
has a sorry,
that's it. You're on.
What on?
We're
Jimmy.
back.
Can you
Johnny,
hear
Kerry.
you? Yeah, yeah.
How
I
are you?
can't
You're
hear
all
you,
right.
James.
You can't hear me.
I can, yeah.
All right. Stop messing around.
You know, I like to wind you up.
Yeah, so we're here today. There's myself, obviously Jonathan, and Kerry's joined us today. We've got Emma in the background as well. So you might have a bit of a conversation. Yeah, so it's we're just talking basically about kind of. I'm really pleased you've come on tonight. So we're kind of going to get another perspective of it because obviously it's been me and Jonathan kind of talking. But do you want to kind of just introduce yourself and kind of your Send world and your children's Send world? What does that look like?
Yeah, so hi everybody. I'm Kerry. I've got two little boys. I've got one at 14 and I've got one at 11. And my journey so far has been a little bit difficult. It's
Right,
been where I'm banging my head against a wall kind of thing
right.
with
Is that really
professionals, in
general?
education, in everything, really.
Yeah.
Well, is your children,
No,
is it a case that your children both children are considered special educational needs
Yeah.
and are able to send? You know, is that the case?
Yeah, that's the case, yeah. And I think it's like from my eldest son, he's struggled all the way through primary school. And it kind of got, well, it just got dismissed every time, all the time. Every time I was going in, I was finding problems. It was, if we were finding it hard to communicate, when it come down to his work, he was finding it difficult. And I remember one time we was writing, when he was finding it difficult with writing, they made him write it over and over again, and he got that frustrated because he couldn't do it. That he ended up throwing chair across room, and he ended up slamming door. Slamming door when teacher were walking behind him, so basically in his face. So there were lots and lots of signs with Kyle from an early stage. But at that point, I didn't know. I just thought it was something that he'd grow out of. Because I didn't know about, I'm all new to this we obviously with Kyle with the SEN. So it's something that, like, it was only towards the end of uh Kyle's school years that I kind of knew a little bit about the early help and stuff. Yeah, it was all new to me. So before that, it never got mentioned about like an EHCP or an early help or anything to put into place, or like even just putting him on SEN register.
Yeah.
So I went in, we had loads and loads of meetings with school constantly. I was getting called in every single day when I picked him up from school. And they ended up, at one point we went into school and me and my mum went in together, and I said, because they were on about putting him into nurture on a dinner time. So I said to him, right, so if that's the case and you feel like Kyle needs to go into nurture, that's where like when it were easier for other special need children to go into. It were where they could go on iPads, or they could go draw,
Yeah.
colour, Lego. So I said, well, if you feel that Kyle needs to go into there, then what are you trying to tell me, that there's a special educational need there with him as well? Oh no, we just think it'll be better for him, and dismissed it all. So all this time I was winning all the time, calling him for meetings myself and asking to come in to see him and speak to him and see what we can put into place for Kyle. Nothing ever got put into place. He once got towards end his year, into year 6. You know, when they take the, the SATs? Is it
That's yeah, that's right.
SATs? So it was just before he took his SATs. it was just so dysregulated. So he ended up there was something that he did at school, and the teachers didn't approve of it. So they put him into isolation.
Yeah.
Well, when they put him into isolation, they put him into a little tiny room thing. It was like just a room with like just a table in it, and shut the door and left him in there all day. And Kyle, for 3 days, I did this. And on the second day, Kyle come out and he was crying at me and he was saying, Mum, I'm so cold. He had his jumper on, he wanted an hoodie, and he wanted his coat to take to school because it was winter as well. So it was when it winter, yeah, well, winter time. So it was before he did his SARS. And
So
it was
this is a 10-year-old, 11-year-old,
yeah,
is that?
yeah. And they left him in a, they didn't, he said to me, Kyle, that nobody's been in. He even had to eat his dinner in there on his own. Literally. There were no teachers that were in there with him, sat with him. He was there all day on his own. All day.
So
this is after the point. This is after the point where they kind of picked up on the
and then, yeah, and then
nurture.
and then, yeah, and then they turned round and said to me when they've done that with isolation, because he still won't be able, they said to me, well, if it continues, then we're going to have no option but to permanently exclude him. And this was literally before he were doing his stats and before he left it in year 6. So it got to year 6, and then that's the point where they were looking towards permanently excluding him in year 6, after having all them years that Kyle was so dysregulated, throwing pencils, getting stressed, he never had any friends, he were on his own. All that time that all these problems were there, all the special educational need were there. If I'd have known about it earlier, it's just because I don't know, because I haven't got any other family members that are special educational need, but I don't know anybody, do you know, to even pick it up for me or ask for what I need to do. So I didn't know at that point. So I was basically just on my own, and I was trying to rely on school because it's all I had. That's
It's
all
fair
I
to
had.
say. It's fair to say as well. Well, Kerry, I've met Kyle, and obviously I've seen how he kind of. It's not just his social and interaction. There is cognitive issues as well, where he kind of you can give him information, he doesn't retain it.
No, it
I,
doesn't.
I find it quite odd that must have been presenting through his school one.
Oh,
If
it definitely it will have been, but I don't know why. For me, I feel like now and looking back, when I look back, I feel it's like they couldn't be bothered. They couldn't be bothered with the paperwork that they had to do.
Right.
They couldn't be bothered because it was too much for them. They have to, with the early helper looking in now, I've done it with Kyle. It's getting all the information together, and it's getting the information from not just the parent but from the school as well, and then it's to log it all and put it down before he even goes through for an EHCP.
So do you think that in essence it's almost like he was judged as a bit like the naughty boy syndrome?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you know,
But I
and
think
that
they blamed it as well. So it started with Kyle at a young age. From nursery, I kind of knew from Kyle being about, I reckon about 2.
yeah,
1.5, 2, about 2.
very
And
very common.
yeah, but at time, when I look back, when I had that mind at time, I thought it was terrible 2s.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it were terrible 2s, terrible 3s, and then terrible 4s come, and then it went on to terrible 5s, and now it's terrible 14s. So I don't know when it's going to change.
I'm currently a terrible 47, so
Yeah,
yeah. So
yeah,
I still, my mum and dad still ain't sorted me out. So
I sorted you out. So I've got a long time then with mine
yeah, well,
too.
you're ahead of the game. Yeah, my mum still won't get me a
Yeah.
EAC. No.
But yeah, so there's a lot of things. There's like even to point. So moving on from junior school, when we got, so at junior school, they opened an early help for Kyle before COVID.
Yeah.
And after COVID, they just opened
yeah.
it. And after COVID, they shut it down. And they didn't tell me. And at the bottom of the form that you get, you're supposed to have parents' signature and tick a box to say that you agree to close it down, as well as the school. And I didn't sign it. And I found this out through Kyle's secondary school when he was in year 8, through secondary school, and they printed it off for me and they said, "Do you know you've not signed this?" And I was like, "No, I don't even know. I didn't even know I had to sign anything." So she printed it off for me and gave it me. And I hadn't signed anything to close it down. So nothing, when Kyle transitioned from year 6 to year 7, that's when everything went downhill. Everything.
What was the transition like? What was the transition like, Kerry?
Shocking, because school promised me. I was that worried. I went in, I was crying. I was so upset. I was emotional. I was stressing because I thought he's not going to cope. He's really not going to cope. I know I'm going to have problems and I know he's not going to cope. So they said to me that they were going to do extra transition days for Kyle. And that never happened. It never happened. So he basically started and got thrown in.
Like any other mainstream child.
Yeah, like any other normal, like not mainstream children, just go in, they get thrown in, they just go to school to do the thing. And yeah, that's what Kyle ended up getting done. And then he started in September, come end of October, beginning of November, he got that many amount of detentions that his detentions were following on from week to week to week to week. Yeah. He had 4 weeks full of detentions after school. So I ended up speaking to him when obviously they gave him his first detention, and I ended up ringing school because I thought I'm going to have to put across my concerns with Kyle, and give him a little bit of an insight of what's been happening at the previous school. Yeah. So I did that, and obviously they said they'd not received anything over from his junior school that he were at, but they said they sent all the information over, but they said they didn't receive it. So they didn't have anything. They didn't know anything about Kyle. Nothing. And there were a lot of things in there as well. A lot. I
think even when a child has not necessarily got a full diagnosis or an EHCP, when they're on SEN support, which I presume Kyle was, no SEN support. Okay.
Nothing. Yeah.
But there were enough content there for him to be identified as needing extra support, needing levels of support. Yeah. And the problem is that it's just all too often this is what you hear. And I wish I was shocked. I genuinely do. I wish I was shocked.
Yeah.
But I'm not.
It's because you'll hear it all the time.
You do, yeah. And you hear. I think the hardest thing for me is, and we've seen it in the legislation changes. There's still that element of parental blame. You know, if you want to talk to parents about managing certain aspects of their life in different ways, not better, not worse, but different. You know, put that support in place. James and I were talking about last night. But what we get is we see administrative errors and we see a poor communication, poor partnership work. And then the person who is fundamentally blamed for kicking off, that classic sounds the same, kicking off, is the person in the middle, which is the parent. And then the focus is on that. And because there's poor partnership work, poor communication, poor transitions historically between primary and secondary, the person who gets labelled is exactly what you've just said. We didn't get it, and the other one says we sent it.
Yeah.
And we even see that with HCPs, don't we, James? We see that when kids, you wouldn't believe. I've dealt with kids who've come from other areas, have come up, and they haven't even got a copy of the HCP.
Yeah, I think what's really, really important to note as well is obviously working in settings. And I've always been a strong believer. When you've got a young person who's exhibiting behaviours that challenge, that's to me is like the symptom. It's like having a cough when you've got a cold.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? it's a clear identifier. There's something kind of going wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The child's not happy. It could be a cry for help. It could be whatever it might be. Or they're struggling to fit in. They're struggling to regulate. Whatever it might be. And I think to let that behaviour go on for as long as it did with your son, to the
Yeah.
point where he's getting detentions backing up week
Yeah.
after week after week
Yeah.
after week, and that not triggering any kind of alarm bells.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and then kind of branding them. We've been there. We've been there ourselves. Yeah, with his oldest,
It was literally
branding him as
two
the naughty
months.
child. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's that's alarming to me.
Yeah.
That's alarming to me. And I
Yeah.
think we'll talk about potentially this moving forward. But I've always said, and I've said in previous, and you're probably the same as me, that behaviour, that challenge, that's an alarm bell ringing.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And
Yeah.
that when we don't pick up that kind of support trail, when he's had support previously in primary school as well.
Yeah.
And I'm going to let you go on, and I'm going to let you carry on now because I know kind of the story, and it goes from bad to worse. Yeah, so
Oh,
I'll
yeah.
let you carry on.
Can I
So,
just ask, is that, you know, where, as he received a diagnosis?
well, we've been to see a paediatrician, and I'm waiting to see a speech language therapy now. That the paediatrician has referred us to, because she can't give the diagnosis by herself. They've got to come together. So we're at that point, but I've still not seen one yet. I don't know how long it's going to take.
It's clear to note, though, Jonathan, he has got an EHCP.
Yeah, he's got an
Now,
EHCP. He's
he
on
has an
SEN register.
EHCP now.
Yeah, he's on SEN register. He's got an EHCP, and he got kicked off of CAMS, and they didn't even see him, didn't even speak to him.
What's his primary what has he got any what's his primary, I can't think of term, you know, what has he got any HCP for? What's it say? What's the main
Communication interaction, communication interaction and SCMH. So as we
but
like
no
to call it,
diagnosis?
I don't know why, but as we like to call it in Barnsley, we seem to have taken two different broad areas and kind of amalgamating them together to create SCI, social communication interaction, which kind of gets bandied around. And we'll talk about that later on in another chat. But yeah, I think he's down. That's where he is at the moment. He kind of really does. But he is on the pathway. I think what
Yeah,
Kerry's saying, he is on that pathway now for
yeah,
diagnosis. Yeah.
ASD.
yeah,
Yeah.
Okay, sorry,
Yeah.
Kerry. Yeah,
I've met him. I've done observations on him. You know what I mean? I've kind of worked, and obviously I'm not a psychologist. I'm not here to diagnose, but
yeah.
there's some key indicators, yeah, being met.
Yeah.
So this is 11. We've got to 11. And what age is he at now?
14.
So Kerry, he's 14 now. So, and he's in year 9.
Yeah, he'll be in year 10 in September.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just tell us now, 3 years, 3 academic years.
So 3 academic years is not had any education. He's had none. He's had none. So he started off with detentions, and then that were from when, if I started in September, detentions were ended October, beginning November. They followed through right up until end of January. They realised then that detentions weren't working, and they were getting detentions every single week. So they decided then to at end of January to suspend him. So they started suspending him. And then after that went on for quite a long time with suspensions. The suspensions got longer, so they got longer days. So it starts off where they suspend him, like he'd be at school, and then all of a sudden they suspend him. So it could have been half a day he was suspended for, because he'd already spent half a day at school, or it could have even been 2 hours or 3 hours while he was there. There were all different times when and then some days it was as soon as he walked in straight away, and then he was suspended. And that was what they said that he'd done. Like, he was not listening, not going to class. If he were in class, he were getting if he were getting agitated and dysregulated, teachers weren't listening to him, and then he ended up kicking off, and he ended up going out, and then they end up chasing him around school. And there were one at times where, because he doesn't like to be chased, if you're at a distance from him and you leave him alone, and he sits there, he'll come round a little bit on himself. If you're coming up to him and you're demanding and you're kind of like forcing him or running after him or anything like that, he just runs further away from you. And they got to one point and I said to school, look, you cannot chase him, he's just going to keep running off. And it come to a point where he did run off one day. He didn't have his phone on him. It took school an hour to phone me to tell me that he'd gone missing from school. An hour. So at this point when they rang me, I got everybody and the dog out searching for him because we couldn't find him. Police at this point had still not been notified by school. And they have a policy where it's 30 minutes. If a child's missing for 30 minutes, the policy is they've got to contact the police. And they didn't. And they didn't. So police never even got contacted that day. And luckily enough, he'd found his way after walking through fields where he didn't know where he was. He had no phone. So he had no Google Maps or anything. And he found his way back home somehow. And and my camera went off in back garden, a notification, and it was him walking through. So after everybody were out, all my brothers, my mum, my dad, me, my partner, my daughter, they were all out looking for him. And he walked back, and school next day never even mentioned anything or asked me if I'd got him or found him or anything. Never even said anything to me. They're just like, it's just like, oh, he's gone. It's not our responsibility now. He's not in school, so it's not our responsibility. That's how I felt. That's what they were thinking, because they never even asked to see if Kyle were all right.
No.
And then so then that happened. So after it got to suspensions, they got to a point where there were that many suspensions that it was coming close up to being permanently excluded.
Yeah.
So what I did then is I spoke to an educational welfare officer that only reason why I knew her is because through what I do. So I know that was the line of work that she worked in. So I rang her and asked her for some help. And the next day she went into the school and she put something in place to prevent the exclusion taking place, a permanent exclusion taking place. So then we got to a point where Kyle, he ended up going to, what's it called? What's that called in Featherstone? Action to Change.
All right.
Yeah.
So they sent him because they couldn't do anything with him, they sent him to Action to Change, and he went there. He was there about 5 weeks, I think, 5 or 6 weeks, and he got kicked out because there was a conflict between a girl and him. So this girl had hit him, but he reacted back. So he was one that got kicked out at Action to Change. And then, because he got kicked out of there, they had to do a plan B. So they didn't have him in school at this point. Kyle wasn't in school at all. And the plan B was to go to the core in Barnsley.
Yeah.
So we went to the core, and Kyle only lasted 3 days, and he couldn't cope. He couldn't cope at all. He was struggling and he couldn't cope. It got to a point where he got that, I think he got that depressed with himself, to be fair. And he ended up just not going in at all, not going in whatsoever.
I think the hardest thing with this, Kerry, is that it's I often think about people from the other side, which is like the process, the people who are process education and things. And I think about it and I think, and then, you try to see things from both sides. You always try to do that. You always try to do it. And I'm sure there's a lot of parents in their darkest hours will say, is it me? Is it that? But what is lacking for me is just the humanity. It's the
Yeah,
humanity. Like, so
Uh-huh.
all I can keep thinking about, regardless of what he's done or what he hasn't done, the way he's behaved, the way he's reacted, all that, he's a child.
Yeah.
And I think about my childhood between 11 and 14 or 11 and 16,
Yeah.
and I was so happy and I had so much fun and I had so much opportunity. Not because I were bright or I were wealthy. I grew up in one well. I just had school were less pressurized. I had
Yeah.
good mates. And I look back and they're friends for life. And I think about these kids and I think to myself, what a terrible situation. They're literally provision hopping,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
and they're like, in terms of a fire, building a fire, they're like dry tinder
Yeah.
every time they go. And all it needs is the slightest spark and they're going to go up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the fingers point, and like you said, they start to then, like your son, they start to self-reflect, absorb all this negativity, and it's just so bloody sad.
It is
And
Yeah.
and,
very.
and what I can't grasp is within the services, where the love has gone.
Yeah.
Like the community love. I don't
Yeah.
mean parental
Yeah.
love.
Yeah.
Community love.
Yeah. Coming together.
Yeah, and it's like, hang on a minute.
Yeah.
Let's just forget about a C1 or a C2 or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Let's just forget about that
Yeah.
and let's
Yeah.
look at this human. So I apologize for interrupting you, but it's very much a case of we can almost get to a point where we're almost feeling like we have to list things
Yeah.
to justify why things have
I think,
happened.
yeah.
The
I,
child.
I I think what I'm going to step in as well because I'm not sure if Kerry's going to kind of mention it. I'm not going to, but we've seen this a lot working within pupil referral units when you get this flare up. You get this cycle of conflict, challenge, and then crisis.
Yeah.
And it's repeating. It's a self-repeating
Yeah.
cycle. Unless somebody steps in to
Yeah.
kind of put their arms around that child and give that child a little bit of spark of opportunity or a spark of give them a sense of belonging.
Mm.
Yeah, give them the self-esteem. And I kind of think to myself, and they're very good at this. I'm ex-army myself. I might be going off a bit of a tangent, but if you look at the new army recruiting videos,
Yeah.
it's all about belonging. We'll give you a sense of belonging. And
Yeah.
there's a reason for that, is because a lot of people who join the forces, a lot of people come from broken backgrounds and broken
Yeah.
homes, and they're trying to find that belonging.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's what's happened with cut. But the really scary thing is when they don't find that belonging in the provision, they
Yeah.
don't find that belonging. And this I strongly believe it's not down to parents work six. I know you're really really hard working with what you do.
Oh,
You're
I'm
constantly
tired.
providing. Yeah, yeah, you're constantly providing for your boys, and the problem is when you don't find that belonging and you go through that cycle as a SEND child where you're being suspended, you're the
Yeah.
naughty boy,
Yeah.
you're the
Yeah.
naughty boy,
Yeah.
you start believing that, and then
Yeah.
you end up rubbing up against the wrong people.
Mm.
And that's where we get into what we're seeing now in the communities, where we get a lot of child criminal exploitation (CCE),
Mm.
and that's really, really worrying to me. And you've only got we've talked about this previously. You look at the figures within the youth justice system. When you're stepping over 80% of children in the youth
Yeah.
justice system with
Yeah.
SEND, it's not recognised, and you can't. I know the situation, and I
Yeah.
know, and I've worked with your son, and I know, and
Well,
he's
that's what
been
happened
assessed
to
for this.
Kyle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, he's
It
been
happened.
assessed for this as well. He
Yeah.
struggles. He struggles retaining information,
Yeah.
and he's got to go at his own pace to be able to do that.
Yeah.
When you're being pressed within that mainstream school environment where you're using the behaviour managed approach, and everyone's got to be at the same level. Everybody's got to be at the same kind of work at the same pace. If you don't work at the same pace, and the teacher's got to
Yeah.
try and behaviour manage that, yeah, that comes across in the wrong way. And I know the background as well from the family. So yeah, you can see when you know everything and you've got the full picture where these flare up happen. You know what I mean? Where it kind of happens. I think we've lost that giving children the sense of belonging. You know what I mean? I think that's gone.
You see, my more concern, I were really annoyed at one point because I didn't feel like the school were doing anything. They weren't doing nothing, nothing. And it got to a point where he wasn't in school. So then when he wasn't in school, he was going out, and we got to a point where he was being exploited. Exploitation, yeah. And that's what we got to. And it was a living nightmare. I had him, he were off rails with himself. He were getting dysregulated all the time. He were picking ornaments up in room and using them to hit me and whack me, turning my house, my room upside down, inside out. And at that point, we were at crisis point. And at that point, I went in and sat in a TAF meeting, and I cried and cried because I didn't know what to do. I was at a crisis point. And they sat there, and I told them, I were always honest with them, always upfront with them. I expressed everything that I were trying to do. I've always tried to work with everybody that's come in. I have got the amount of professionals that I have got involved, and they're nowhere to be seen.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're nowhere. I have got, every time a professional come in and they asked me how, who I were working with and who we were with, they were like, they said to me on phone, wow, you've got all these professionals. But everyone said it to me, wow, you've got all these professionals. Why is there nothing getting done? Why are you no further forward? Well, that's what I want you to tell me. Why am I not further forward? Why am I still sat here 3 years down the line and still sat in this same position? Or even worse, a position.
Yeah.
Why am I sat here? So I can't tell you why it's not moved on. That's for you to tell me. You know, that's for up to them to tell me. But it's been so difficult. For Kyle, he don't sleep. He never sleeps. He's never slept well from being little all the way growing up, and it's getting more difficult as he's getting older. He can do 38 hours with no sleep at all, and then all of a sudden he'll just go boom, and that's it, and he's out. Then out for car is out. And I have tried. I've been to the doctors 3 times. I've been to doctors for help, for anything to help him, anything to help. You see, my thing is, if a child isn't sleeping, right, you know yourself, if you had no sleep, you couldn't function. You couldn't. I couldn't stand and do my job all day on having no sleep for 38 hours or 36 hours or even 24 hours. You know, you can't do it. So the thing is, for me, is for my son, how is he going to move forward? How is he going to do this when his sleeping pattern's all out? He don't sleep, and when he does sleep, he sleeps through the day because he's up all night. And it's not down to me saying like, oh yeah, you can go on your gaming, you can do whatever you want. It's nothing to do with that, because a lot of people turn around and they do say to you, well, that's your problem, that's your parenting. No, it's not my parenting. He doesn't switch off. He doesn't turn off. He comes down and sits at the side of me on the sofa, and he's only just started doing this. And he gets upset. He's angry, frustrated, because he says to me, why won't my brain switch off? Why can't I just turn off and go to sleep like everybody else? You know, and I've got my child sat there at the side of it. Bearing in mind, we're having this conversation, it could be like 2 o'clock in the morning. You know, I've got another child. I've got to get up for school on a morning and get there for 8:30 on a morning, and I've also got to work all day as well as in between break off and see to my son that's at home. So like, and he's upset that he can't get to sleep. So it's like nothing to do with. It's not the parents' fault. It's not. It's not the parents'
No,
fault. And
no.
you hear a lot of that. You do hear a lot of that. And it's like, well, if I were you, I'd turn it off. If I were you, I'd take all his gaming away and everything else. It don't work like that.
No, it doesn't. And
Don't
you
work
know,
like that.
when you look at when you look at technological advancements, okay, and you look at the things that children are playing with, this I just want to put this in here because it's a very specific point.
Yeah.
But you look at all the things that kids have got access to, and people want to say, "Oh, you've bought them that, you've gave
Yeah.
them you've done all that." Okay, right. There are literally in Silicon Valley, there are offices and buildings that are committed to how can they get the next level of addiction
Mm.
for teenage kids and younger
Yeah.
into their
Yeah.
technology.
Yeah. Yeah.
They are totally committed. That's what their life is because that's the revolving door. That's the next thing. So, we start with Facebook and then and they had to go back and they're reinventing and Snapchat and the way that things were. And there are some of the greatest minds, ironically, probably neurodiverse minds as well,
Yeah.
in Silicon Valley and other areas that are working at the absolute optimum level to get our children addicted to their technology and their software. We have got some level of control over it, but
Oh
we're
yeah,
affected.
yeah. Yeah.
But we aren't. It's a false reality because the children want it and
Mhm.
and they'll find a way to get it. It's a bit
Yeah.
like drinking sugary pop or whatever.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's really important, and people are so quick to look at just the smallest thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they'll say, well, they're on the phones, and then I
Yeah.
mean, my daughter will come home who's just finishing school. Her homework's been put on a mobile phone.
Yeah. It's true. Yeah, they
No,
do.
and
Yeah.
and it's like, well, what's the message? If my
Yeah.
daughter is going on and being told to do her homework on a mobile phone and it's
Yeah.
set up in that framework and that thing, then you're encouraging that.
Yeah.
All the communication with us is via, it's not via email, it's through
It's
CCOM
technology. Yeah.
technology and it's app based, so it's
Yeah.
phone based. It's not even desktop computer based.
No.
So
No.
it's really easy to point fingers. It's really
Mm.
easy. And one of the I weren't distracted. I was looking for a
Yeah.
pyramid, something I want to share and show you. But so if we just kind of, what's interesting to me and just listening to this, if I were assessing this right now, I appreciate you haven't finished the full story, but
Yeah.
we've got an EHCP and we're looking at education. And James and I are banging this drum all the time now. And we're really getting sort of, the more we look into it, the more we go down this rabbit hole. And we're saying, well, is it really an education crisis? Is it more a case that it's a social care crisis?
Yeah.
Yeah. I
For
agree. Yeah.
disabled children, you know. And what I mean by social care crisis is actually where are the care services? Where is the caring
Yeah.
services? It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be a classic social worker care, but where is the care services and where's the sort of strings that are holding the family up outside of the 6 hours a day once they've left school?
Yeah.
And we clearly see an rise. Now, so if I were to ask you, he's got an EHCP,
Yeah.
how would you summarize social care's involvement in your child's life?
Say that again. How would I what?
So what if I said to you, how involved is social care in your life, your family's life, what would you say? What's the answer to that?
If you involved a social care in my life,
No,
no.
have you got any social,
Oh,
Yeah.
have I got any social care?
yeah,
No.
nothing.
No.
And they are aware. They're fully
Yeah,
aware of
they're
the
aware.
situation.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
aware.
Yeah.
They're all. Yeah, they are all aware of it. Yeah. Yeah.
Has there ever,
I've even got to the point where with social care, like obviously with the social services,
Yeah.
I contacted them myself. I contacted myself when I was in a crisis point with my son. I contacted him and I spoke to him and I asked him for help. I literally asked him.
do you claim disability living allowance for your son?
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So what a lot of people know, James and I have been talking about it. What a lot of people don't realize is that that's kind of the real header for the government. And
Yeah.
once you claim DLA or well, it's DLA when the
It's
child,
delay, yeah. Yeah.
yeah. What happens then is your child automatically gets what's called child in need status. Okay.
Mm.
And that means that they're registered disabled and the child in need status. And when they have child in need status, they fall under Equality Act 2010 and they've got a protected characteristic, much the same as gender's a protected characteristic, sexual orientation, and so on, and black and ethnic minorities under your ethnicity. Um, and sex and gender. So once you start claiming DLA, your child's got child in need status, and no one can take that away from you.
Yeah.
Nobody can take that away from you. As part of that child in need status, if your child enters into a level of turmoil that is beyond your abilities or beyond schools or beyond a light touch from, say, a early help or what have you, what should automatically happen, particularly with a child who has an EHCP, education, health, and care, is you are entitled to have what's called a Section 17 report.
Yeah.
And it's one of the very few reports which is seen as a proactive a report. So, as an example, if you are being accused of child protection issues, you are not, but if a family
Yeah.
was,
Yeah.
it would have something called a section four. It would be section 47 of the law.
Mm.
But when you're looking at child safeguarding, because safeguarding is a lot different to child protection.
Yeah.
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 If you look at that word and you actually rearrange it, guarding safety,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
it paints a completely different
Different.
perspective, doesn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what people do is say, oh, that's safeguarding and child protection. The guarding of safety is the most work. And the reason why it's the most work is invariably it's to prevent the need for child protection.
Yeah.
That's what social care is founded on. Social care is founded on children should be with their families.
Yeah.
And we need to do everything we can to support that. Child protection is the last thing. Now, when our children are born disabled or they're registered and they're
Yeah.
recognized disabled, what people are doing is they're taking a leap and saying, well, if there's elements of that child's safety needs guarding, that doesn't mean that it is completely the parent. It might mean that the educational establishment, the education system, the local services, the local police, all them factors that form up a partnership might not be doing right by that kid. Do you
Yeah.
see what I mean?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we're still obsessed with saying, because it's social care, it's parent blame. Now, what I want to do is I want to just show you this pyramid, and I want you to look at it because
Yeah.
it's really interesting, and it's important for a lot of parents. This is the assessment pyramid that a social worker should use when you have a Section 17 welfare report.
Yeah.
Okay, and
Yeah.
it's a pyramid. And James, you can read through it. It's fairly straightforward. But what it does is you're in what I'm hearing is education is not the most important thing right now.
Yeah.
You're in crisis,
Yeah.
or you might be coming out of it a little bit.
Out of
But
it. Yeah.
yeah, but there's that crisis point, and what you need more than anything is care and health rather
Yeah.
than education.
Yeah.
Before education can come into play,
Yeah.
you've got to have care and
You've got
health
to have care and
services
health
wrapping around.
We
first.
have
Yeah.
we have this conversation a lot when you look at the kind of fundamental base pillars of Maslow's hierarchy. I know it's a bit antiquated now, but Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you don't feel safe and secure, you're
Mm.
never going to move on. You're never going to achieve self-actualization. You're never going to get to a point where you can kind of look after yourself properly. And that's
Yeah.
not safe and secure as regards to in the household, for argument's sake. When we're talking safe and secure in your case,
Yeah.
he's not
Yeah.
safe and secure about what his future is going to look like.
No.
He's
No.
got all these questions bombarding around his head.
Mm.
He's going through adolescence. He's all these mixed fit, and with
Well,
somebody
it's got
who's
all
got
these professionals as well that keep coming
100%,
in,
yeah,
and they
and
don't, and they
disappearing,
keep coming in.
yeah,
They're getting they're getting that, but that kind of bond built up between that trust,
yeah,
right? They're getting that trust, and then all of a sudden they've got to end what they're doing now, so we're gonna have to let you go. So
yeah,
then they move
yeah,
him
yeah,
on to the
yeah.
next one, and he does same again, and that's happened with Chili Pep. That's happened with Chili Pep. And it's happened with you. He's been in your target support as well.
yeah.
And that happened in this
Parachuting
time.
in, parachuting out. 8 to 12 weeks. We had the same conversation last night about early help.
Well,
11 weeks, 1 hour, 1 hour. Yeah,
it's the episodical care model. So it's looking at episodes of care, and it's seeing children and families as a light touch. Let's go in. Let's do 10 weeks. It's very similar. For speech and language therapy was always a huge bone of contention for me and my ex-wife with regard to our
yeah,
son. You know, how can you have an episode of care? And what the argument was is that we've set him targets and someone else is going to do it. So it were almost like people. What happens is the people who are qualified to do the actual work are outsourcing the work to a person with less agency. So if you think about it, with speech and language therapy, the model that we follow in our local area is a speech and language therapist comes in, works with a child for maybe an hour, 2 hours, whatever. They set up a set of goals and things that they need to achieve. And then what they do is they take the child off speech and language therapy and they outsource the work to a TA or to someone in the school. And then what they do is you can re-refer back into the service once you've met them targets. So what it is, it's like outsourcing. That's what it is. And that's happening more and more and more with social care. So people who've gone through 4 years of training, massively educated on social care, understanding, know what they do. They might have even specialised in disabled children's team. They come in, and what they've been told by senior and executive management is light touch it. Get it down, get it moved down to tier two. So tier three is social care worker in your life. We're a DCT chair. So when you're at tier three, the aim is always at the most do a Section 17 report and then move them down. Move them down to tier two, which is a social care worker or an
yeah, yeah,
assistant. And that's what it is. So it's constant. The constant flow is light touch, move them back,
Yeah.
right? Get them off the people who cost the most money, basically. But can you see
yeah.
this pyramid? Yeah,
Yeah.
I
yeah.
Can't read it. I'm blind.
Okay, so down so all it does
I,
is
I,
when
I can I can have a go at it, mate, if you want me to. So we've got at the bottom. Are we
and I
looking at the
definitely
foot?
can't see it. It's that tiny on my phone. Oh,
Yeah.
that's
Oh, there we
better.
go.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
right at the bottom, family and environmental factors, community resources. Well, say no more on that one. We have our family hubs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Family social integration, income. Income's a massive one for me. I think this is where we seem to be seeing a lot of kind of. We have this line in Barnsley where, well, you could call it the poverty line if you wanted to, where if you drop below it, you seem to be forgotten. Um, employment, housing, wider family, family history and function. Yeah, yeah.
so
Again,
what
all
this
Everything
very
else
important
at top
factors.
at triangle.
so what this
Yeah. You want to
triangle
have a go?
what it's doing this pyramid, right, is if you look in the middle, obviously it's child involved. So the child is in the middle, and I think one of the most common themes that I always hear and what I've heard in this week with Kerry today is it don't feel like the child's in the middle.
No,
Okay, you don't feel
no,
that
absolutely.
everything that's based around social care principles, social care models are working, care working's a model, and even education, if we're going to do it right, is the child's in the middle, right? And this is the whole principles of TAF meeting or TAC meetings as they were historically, is it's this team around the family, team around the child. But it almost feels like we've got to a point where it's been said that that's where we're at. But if you look at this is the principle of what should happen. And it's categorized into three key areas around that pyramid, around that triangle. The child's development needs, the parenting capacity, and that's not a negative comment. That's there's a lot of factors that can affect parenting capacity. It might be physical health, it might be mental health, it might be single mothers, it might be different times, single fathers, it might be problems with health with parents, special educational needs, all sorts of things. It's not a criticism. I hasten to add the parenting capacity is sometimes, and what I keep saying, and I said the night before, is sometimes people do need that support and help, and they do need to recognize that they can't deal with their child in the way that they'd
Problem
like
you've
to.
got there. the problem you've got there, we seem to interpret that in Barnsley, parenting capacity has something to beat the family with. Are
Absolutely.
you with me? Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's the issue. So I've been in plenty of meetings, and I think Kerry hit it on the head. And obviously, you experienced what you had when you were going into meetings by yourself or with your mum, for
Yeah.
argument's sake, with
Yeah.
professionals, was then completely different to when you had an advocate like myself sat there with you.
Yeah.
And
100%.
that is a massive, massive issue. You can't keep
100%.
parent blaming and beating. You look at the way the new team around the child or the TAF meeting or whatever they call it, THE now, when you're looking at worries and concerns. The first part of that, when we were sat in that meeting, if you can remember, Kerry, was
Yeah. Yeah.
then directed back to the parent and what have you done? What have you
Yeah.
done about this?
Yeah.
You know,
It's what have we,
that's
yeah,
yeah, yeah. What have you as the parent done? What
done.
have you done?
Yeah.
The key thing with this here, though, this is what I keep saying about social care. It's not a dirty term. It's not a dirty word. It's the
Oh no,
caring.
100%.
There's a huge amount of people who go into social work, and vast majority, and they study much more technical than this, but then they get provisions and resources like this that help you to focus on why you're having a report or doing it, and they want to do that report. They didn't enter in to this line of work, right, to like touch families. They want to do this work. And this is why, and then executive leaders will say, well, there's not enough money in the system and that. And it's like, that's okay. But co-produce with us and tell us what it is. We can campaign the government. We can campaign the central government. And that's the thing that I really get annoyed with is local authorities will say, there's not enough money in the system, there's not enough money in the system. But they won't empower us to empower them. The first instinct for them is to say, we'll stay close to national government. We'll put the parents under the bus. When you look at this down here, and James, you make a fantastic point, which is down that side, which is parenting capacity. I listened to Kerry for the first sort of 35 minutes of this, and there's not one thing down that side that she ain't smashing, you know?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Basic
Yeah,
care and
It,
more, ensuring safety, stimulation, guidance and boundaries, stability. It's all there. And then you look at, you listed when he went missing. This
yeah.
is how my brain went. When he went missing, the wider family. So you're starting
Mhm.
to see that. Housing, you can see straight away behind you, lives in a nice house. And it's not just about a nice house, it's a loving house. You can see that. And it's mum works.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's getting positive, he's getting positive role models,
Yeah.
people working, there's income, there's things you can do, family social integration. And what all this does for me, and this is where I get really, really frustrated, is why on earth, with all of this information here, and you can look at the biggest percentage of families who've got disabled children or children that are claiming DLA, thus have got a protected characteristic, and they're knocking these out at park. But still, you're going into meetings, still, you're living your child's childhood feeling like you're under a negative microscope. And James, you're at the head. It's how you interpret. Two people can look at this triangle and it can be interpreted completely different. And if you've got a culture at the top, right, that says certain things, then you're going to interpret things in that way because that's what your managers are saying.
yeah. And the biggest thing about that, I think, when we put these reports out and these SIM reports, Section 17s, EHCPs, I've been involved with lots of meetings, lots and lots of meetings. And the first thing out of one professional's mouth, and it happens a lot, is, "Oh, the wording is very subjective." Yeah, you know what I mean? It's very subjective. What do you mean? It's very subjective. You know what I mean? We're at such a vague point, I think, within Barnsley. Um, when you like touching stuff, when you're kind of not recognising what's kind of going off, and that's been translated then into EHCPs like Kyle's
Mhm.
EHCP. We've looked
Yeah.
at that. Yeah, you kind of get to the point and you think there's no wonder we're not seeing it almost feels intentional. It's kept vague, it's kept subjective, it's kept to a point where we can parent bash. You know what I mean? We can blame the parents, we can push it back onto the parents. you get the parents kind of running around in circles going, "Oh, hang a minute, is it me?"
Yeah,
Second guessing
that's
everything
true.
they're
It's
possibly
true.
doing.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
true. You do question yourself when you get to that point. You do actually sit back and question yourself, and you question yourself to say, is it me? Things go round in your head. Is it me? It's like, for instance, I sit back and like we obviously my youngest son, and I sit back and I think, am I just? Is it me or is it showing? Am I just picking at things? Or is it showing? Like I question myself all the time with that. I do, but it's people as well, professionals as well, that sometimes put that into your head. As a parent, not knowing much, like earlier, I had a conversation with James. So it's like, obviously, for me, and I'm not afraid to admit it, like sometimes when professionals are talking, they're using, as I could say, big words or like things, the words that I've never heard before. I don't even know what they mean half at the time. So when they're saying that to me, I'm like, well, what does that mean? I'd have to get on Google and Google it. But instead of them coming to me and saying, and me, like, if I said, sometimes I'll say to James, oh, James, what does that mean? Like, can you explain it to me in a different way? And he'll explain it. But when you ask a professional that, they can't. They don't do it. They don't explain to you in a way that you can understand it on what they're trying to do or what the next step is. It's a kind of in a I call it school language. Yeah, I call it school language. So it's like I'm an hairdresser. My day-to-day thing is talking about, are you going on holiday? Have you had a good day? Have you had a good week? How's work gone? That's my simple thing. That's what I do. Yeah. Now, when I go into school and they're using they've got all these words and whatever they're doing, and when they're communicating together, to me, it's school language. And sometimes it sounds like they're talking French or Spanish
You're
or something
almost
like that. Yeah. When I'm gonna have to
yeah.
go onto Google or put microphone on to repeat it back to me in English.
Yeah. You're
But yeah,
almost like you're interpretate. You need an interpreter. You need
interpreted.
a bridge.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. And it is like that. And there's a lot of parents out there. And it's not that you think, it's not that you're stupid, it's just that you've never worked in that industry. It's not your, it's just, like for me, I've
I think
never,
that goes the other way as well. You know what I
yeah.
mean? That goes
Well,
the other
it's
way as
like
well.
me
We do.
talking to you about my like what I do, like with hairdressing and colours and stuff. If I said something to you now to mix something up, you'd be like, "What you talking about?"
Yeah.
Like you don't understand. Like my clients don't, and they'll be like, "Oh, you'll just do what you need to do," and I'm like, "Okay." Like they don't understand the numbers, they don't understand the codes, they don't understand, you know, they don't understand what to do, what to mix and stuff. It's just,
But
it's,
every one of them people who, or a lot of those people who are using that non-inclusive language or non-recognition that it's not inclusive, they're all having their hair done,
yeah,
you know.
yeah.
So
They're all
it's
having
like,
their
yeah,
yeah,
exactly. And
yeah,
and I think that's the problem is that people don't they will talk all day long. It's very, very trendy now to say that you're empathetic, that you have empathy,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
It's show empathy.
yeah,
It's not actually real empathy is when you like thinking it's this internal self-reflection. It's not like,
yeah,
oh, that makes me feel sad. I'm really
yeah,
empathetic. That's not it. If you're feeling empathy,
yeah,
what you can't help but do is change your ways
yeah,
and try to do things. And
Personally, Jonathan, I also I also feel there's an element of when you've got these professional people sat there, and you're kind of having conversation. And I actually do see this quite. I will say I do see this quite a lot, and you can kind of see the cogs turning and the question: Have I got the knowledge? Have I got the understanding to be able to kind of deal with this? And then they revert back to type. Does that make sense? They revert
yeah,
back to the let's be a school teacher again and talk school teacher jargon and kind of where they're struggling to process.
yeah,
Because what you've got in a lot of these meetings, and I know you've got you've got a parent on one side who's becoming very, very emotional and very, very emotionally charged and upset, who's trying to convey what's going off in their life within that family situation, what's going on in their child's life, to a professional. That the professional might be sat there and you don't know their background. You know what I mean? It could be triggering to that. You have no idea. And they're trying to process this information, and then they're trying to get across to you to say, yeah, we understand, but then that
Yeah.
comes across in some form of jargon and language where you're
Yeah.
then going, what you're trying to tell me? Are you not going to help me, or are you helping me?
Yeah. And
I,
that's where I think they can get away with it, James, and they do get away with it because they do bully us parents. The bully us parents into it. The bully us because they know that they can. Because sometimes we don't understand. We don't get it.
One of the
And
what
the
the mo-
bulliers,
one of the most interesting things is it's really interesting that over the last 6 to 8 weeks, the word that I'm hearing more and more in our borough is
bullying.
bullying.
yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
I had a
yeah.
professional message me saying we were bullied.
yeah.
We were bullied by other professionals.
Mm.
And one of the things that a dear friend of mine always says is bullying comes in lots of different shapes and
I do.
guises and forms, right? And
Yeah,
being ignored is recognized as being a form of bullying,
yeah,
right? Because
Well,
it's silence. And I look at what James has sort of exposed, and he's been banging on about it to me for the last 8, 9 weeks because he's on call face. I'm not.
yeah,
I don't work. I work with one or two parents who are personal friends, and I can't do anything else at the moment. But James is on call face, and he's saying they're delaying for a reason. They're delaying for a reason. They're delaying for a reason. And I'm saying, I know, mate, but I can't see what it is yet. There's a white paper coming out. Maybe that'll be it. And then boom, today. And me and him, I phoned him straight away, and I Jimmy, I said, look, it's here,
yeah,
mate,
you
it's
did,
here.
yeah, yeah.
And we were
yeah,
like, shit, that's it. Excuse my
yeah,
French. And
yeah.
and that's what it is. And but what's happened with that, in my opinion, and which I'm entitled to, is I believe that people have known that. They've ignored parents,
That's what
right?
they've done. They've
Yeah,
bullied
they've
us.
ignored
They've bullied us.
and it's a form of
Yeah.
bullying.
Yeah, it's bullying us, but also it's making
Well,
false
yeah,
promises. It's false
yeah.
promises because when they
Yeah.
come out and they say to you, "Oh, don't worry," I mean, there's one that I hate to hear, and there's one particular one that says it to me that said it to me all the time, and she said to me, she went, yes, she went, oh, she says, yeah, I totally get where you're coming from. I totally understand. I understand. And I'm like, no, no, you don't understand because you're not in my household. You are not living what we are living in this household. You are not you're not the one that's cooking for your son at 2 o'clock on a morning because he's not been able to sleep.
Yeah.
And then when he does sleep, he's happened to fall asleep. Then he gets up and then he's up all night and you're cooking for him because he's not had nothing to eat all day. But I'm a parent, I can't go to bed and not cook for him. I can't see him starving all day because he finds it hard to even use an air fryer. He finds it hard. He don't. I show him microwave. I show him air fryer, and he just doesn't register with him. It don't matter how many times I show him and tell him it doesn't register. My younger son, he can use an air fryer. He can make a sandwich. He can use a toaster. He can use a microwave. He could put a ready meal in if he were hungry and I walked there at that time to do it to make it his tea. He'd get something and put it in
It's
until I
very
made his tea.
yeah.
But Miel doesn't do that. So they don't understand. They have got don't. I don't like it when they turn around and they say to you, "Well, yeah, I get you, and I get it, and we understand." No, you don't.
It's
You
narcissism at
really
its best,
don't
isn't it? Let's be honest.
understand. You don't because you're not living it.
Yeah. And I think
I
the
agree.
problem you've got, I think your two boys highlight this massively. I think our two boys do as well, too, and probably a lot of the families out there. Um, you're two, a polar opposite, your two boys. Both send, but the polar opposite.
What's
And
total opposite.
yeah, totally
Yeah,
opposites. Yeah, yeah. So you've
yeah.
kind of got like night and day between
Oh
your
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
There's
yeah.
there's common ground, but there's night and day. And I think um, what we seem to see with services and some professionals, and we had a good example was our youngest is Senko. Well, we treat him like any other autistic boy. Right. Okay. So the fact that's just come out of your mouth is extremely alarming to me. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
okay, do you? Right. Brilliant. So what does that mean? Do you know what I mean? And I think when they're sat there going, yeah, yeah, I understand, we're back to that light touch.
They don't.
It kind
Yeah.
of feels like they're saying whatever they want to do to get out of your house as quickly as possible. Does that
All
make
they
me?
wanted to do is just they want that they're only saying so you. It's what they want you to hear. Does that
Yeah.
make sense? So if someone comes out and says that, you as a parent then, like for parents that are just starting out or just going through this first stage, first hurdle of it all, right? You're going to get a professional coming out to you and they're going to say what they want you to hear, right? It's what you want to hear. You want to hear that everything's going to be okay. You want to hear that they are going to support you all the way and everything is going to get put into place. You know, we can do everything. It'll start changing. You know, you'll get more help and everything else. You don't. You don't get any help. And from my experience, I have had loads of professionals involved, and and I've got loads, and there is not one professional that's in contact with me at minute, even though I've got them. I haven't heard from a professional at all. Oh, apart from James. James, yeah. You see, that's the thing though, because this is why it's getting a little bit. I've never felt as better since I've been with James. I was at a point where I didn't know what to do. I was at a point where I was questioning myself. I was at a point where I was so depressed myself, because that's another thing as well for parents. And I've got you back. For all parents that are watching, I have got you back, because the children can't voice their voice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Us as parents have to voice for our children, right? And the thing is, when we're doing that amongst everybody else in family, trying to sort that out, trying to sort your work life out if you work, and then trying to sort that out as well, it all builds up on top of you. But I can tell you now, and I can promise you now, there's not one support you'll get as a parent. None. Right, you've got to deal with all this. You've got to deal with all the stress. You've got to deal with all the professionals letting you down. You know, your promises, false promises that are made, right? You don't get it. You don't get it. You've got to deal with all that in your head. So you as a parent, when you're getting told that we can do this and we can put you on right, everything is going to be all right and we can do this. Do you know what? You can't do it.
I'll
And you're
tell you
not
something.
doing it.
I think something that's really interesting about that, Kerry, is that what you see, you're right in what you say, and there's just not that support there.
No.
And what I'm seeing, and with the conversations that I have with people being in it for a long time, and that is that the the mental health of parents is declining
Yeah.
at an unbelievable rate. That's the first thing.
Mm.
I've never seen the mental health of St. parents be as bad as it is in this town, right? Um, Also, what I'm seeing as well is the increase in physical health. So what I see and what I've heard is too much alcohol being consumed.
Yeah,
Okay.
substance misuse. Yeah,
Agree,
Substance
yeah.
misuse. And the other thing that is often falls under the radar, and that is overeating.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know.
or under
I
eating.
know. Yeah,
Or under eating. But the main, if you go to send events, what I see, and I include myself in this as being overweight. I'm overweight. I've never
Yeah,
been overweight.
yeah, yeah.
What I see unbelievable levels of obesity. But what I also see is I see unbelievable levels of obesity in Sen parents.
oh
But
yeah, yeah,
I do see high
yeah.
levels of obesity in Sen service workers.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
last year I was twice besides, and that was due to the stress. I have never been as big, right? Last year I've never been as big in my life, and that's the honest truth. I've never been as big. I wasn't as big as I was last year, even when I was pregnant, when I had my youngest, right? I was I was so depressed. I was just piling it on, and I couldn't get it off because I was so depressed. I wasn't sleeping at night because I was up with Kyle. Then when I did go to bed, I was worrying. All that goes in my head is I'm worrying. I'm not worrying about now. I'm worrying about the future. In my head, it's the future. It's
Yeah.
where he's going to be in the future. Not
Yeah.
now. Not the now. It's the future. Where is he going to be? We're talking when he's in adult age.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I
Where's he
think
going to be? What
when
path
we
is he going to go down?
when we look at these things that are said and these comments, like you said earlier about, how people can use like I feel your
Yeah,
pain and all this
yeah,
mumbo jumbo. One of the ones, and there's a lovely video about it. It's in a film, but it really resonated with me. And me and my mum had already talked about it when I went through some difficulties with services, quite high level difficulties. And I used to come back from meetings and I used to recite what had been said in order to them. And the stock phrase was, it's not that simple.
yeah,
Used to get that all the
yeah,
time. Yeah,
yeah,
oh, it's not as simple as that, right?
yeah,
And there's this lovely scene in a film where this person asks, oh, I don't know the film, I can't remember what it is, I'll find it.
yeah,
And he says, what's the biggest lie you've ever been told? And the guy says, it's not that simple. And she
yeah,
went, well, how do I rephrase my question? He says, no, no. The biggest lie I've ever been told is that it's not that simple. It
yeah,
is simple.
yeah,
Yeah.
It is simple.
yeah,
Yeah.
The
Absolutely.
95%, and you extract that and put it into cent. Okay, it is simple. It's been overly confused, overly complicated, and
mm,
it's not that hard.
yeah,
And when you start to break it down and look at it in its purest form, these are vulnerable children. They're the most vulnerable children in
mm,
this case in our borough,
mm,
with
Yeah.
the perhaps sole exception of children who are in care, right?
mm,
And a lot of those children are SEND, by the way.
mm,
And when you look at it, with the most vulnerable children in the world, we're a town that's founded on socialism, on community-based principles, supposedly. We're deprived, but we've got a huge community spirit that's in us back in his history. And what I feel is that Barnsley's losing its identity.
oh, it is. Yeah,
Everybody's saying they're marketing the crap out of Barnsley
yeah,
to pull in certain people, right, into town centre and that.
yeah,
But it's losing its community. It's losing it. And it always starts with your most vulnerable. The
yeah,
major societal issues always start. And the way that you judge an area is by how it treats its same
yeah,
kid,
yeah,
honestly.
yeah, yeah,
And there's all areas that are going through stuff. But the most
Yeah.
interesting thing for me, and I've got to say this, is there is a legal obligation for a local area to have parent voice, a structured parent voice. And I'll die on this hill. And in 10 years since the code of practice, 10 years, a decade,
yeah.
we've had strategic voice for roughly 6 months. Right? So there's been 9.5 years where
Yeah,
we've had no structured parent voice. So when you speak, Kerry, and I speak, and others speak, and we want to take that higher and higher, there's nothing.
I know. Yeah, I know.
There's nothing
I
that can
know.
take.
And thing
Oh,
is, all it is that we just want to be heard and
yeah.
listen to. If everything went well, it's like a fantasy, but if everything went smoothly, yeah, and everything went into place, and these people actually did something and helped you, right? These kids and these parents, like me and my children, we won't be in this predicament that we're in today.
No.
We'd have that
You're talking about,
support.
yeah, you're right. You're talking about Barnsley being the land of opportunity. We're not.
Yeah,
We're
yeah,
definitely not. I'm conscious on time, and I think we're gonna get you back on again if that's all right at some point, just to kind of
yeah.
discuss the VI, the visually impaired side of things. But
Oh yeah, yeah.
To be honest
obviously,
with you,
what
James,
what you're,
to be honest with you, James, I'm a little bit worried because I think she's lacking in confidence, to be able to speak and
yeah, I
stuff.
know. No, no, but what I want to, I'm gonna.
What
There's
me?
been
It's what
some
I do for a
shocking.
job every day.
There's been some shocking news today. Some shocking news today, and I think it's a huge turning point or a potential turning point, which we're going to cover in another show. But Do you want to kind of run through the headline, and then I'm going to pose a question to you, Kerry?
Yeah.
When you hear this headline, I want you to think about what your experience has been go so far, kind of with what you've been dealing with, and you tell us if you think this is going to, as a parent, yeah, if you think this is going to make life better or worse. Okay, do you
Right.
want to read the headline out, Jonathan? What's kind of
Yeah, so what's been leaked or deliberately leaked today is that the government have turned around and said that um, they are looking into, they're already far down, completely removing the whole send tribunal system. So you will lose your right of appeal. And so when your only hope is to go to tribunal and have a judge hear it, the judges who oversee the tribunal process have been told this last week that their services are no longer required. They're removing the legal right to appeal. And what they're doing is that in a replacement of it, they're simply going to let it be dealt with in-house in mainstream schools.
No, it's
And
not going to
get
work.
this,
It's
get
not going to
this,
work.
governors will be the people that decide.
Oh my God.
Couldn't write it.
It's not going to work. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. It's not going to work in schools. School
The
with it.
intention, Kerry, the intention is that
Yeah.
all children at this point will go down a path of entering a mainstream school,
But
and the
how?
mainstream all children, right? There's no mention of specialist provisions at this point, right? All children will go through the doors, metaphorically, physically, or wheel through, whichever way you
Yeah.
want to look at it, and the school will filter. That's what's being said, that the school will filter who can be dealt with at the school, what needs are required, perhaps what structure and level of SEN support they're going to get, and then those who might go to a specialist provision and stuff. And it's all good. It's the powers and
So this is a teacher. So this is the teacher. This is the school. This is the school that's going to decide
yeah,
whether they
yeah,
and
yeah.
do an EHCP, and that's the school that's going to do it. Is that correct? Is that what you're saying?
Well, what it is it's your right to appeal. So the
Oh,
local authorities, but it is basically when you start off, it's like when you start off on summer and you start arguing, it's a bit like if you think about a couple, you
yeah,
start off with an argument, your right of appeal is a divorce. That's
yeah,
so.
yeah.
So you might start off, that's where you end up. That's so when you start off, if you end up arguing with a school, you always knew that you had Sendias, and I genuinely mean this. I think Sendias are going to be gone. I think they're just going to get
Yeah.
rid of Sendias
Mm.
because I just don't see it. I just don't see how they'll keep them.
Well, I think there'll be a lot of local authority staff going. I think everyone who's been kind of clapping and cheering and waiting for this to come in secretly have been kind of tapping some porcupines to staff as well because you'll lose EHC team staff, you're going to lose
Yeah,
EHA
you're going to lose them
workers,
all.
you're
All of
going
Don't
to
them are
lose
going.
them
forget,
all.
All of them are going to lose their jobs.
but
You'll
don't
All
lose them
these.
all.
forget, it's not that simple. It's not as
Yeah.
simple as that. And also, don't forget, we'll definitely feel their pain and
Yeah.
be
Oh yeah.
frustrated.
Yeah, we
So
understand what you're going through.
yeah,
Yeah,
we
yeah,
understand
yeah,
what you're going through.
yeah.
But it's so difficult. It's so difficult because I remember trying to put a complaint in, and I wanted to write this complaint, right? It was about 4 years ago. And I said, so and so is a liar. And they said, you can't say that. I said, I just did. And they were like, you can't say that. I said, well, I want to write in my complaint that that person is a liar. We
Yeah.
can't take a complaint that says that, right? So I went away, and instead of it being called a lie, I've still got complaints in.
That'd be me.
Yeah,
That.
yeah. And I had to write, this person has misrepresented the truth. That's what it went through us. It went through. I had to write the complaint had to be that it was, but the reason why I bring that up is because, and it's not aimed at staff, but this is state sanctioned misrepresentation of the truth.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
being lied to.
Yeah, it's lied to all the
They're
time.
not behind all of this, by the way. They're not changing any laws. They're not changing any legislation.
Mm.
Not
They
yet.
will literally force people to go and try and find solicitors and go through the court system, not
Mm.
tribunals where you
Yeah.
could have that free. You could raise that argument in a tribunal at no
Mm.
cost. They're going to force you.
I like how
96%.
Jonathan's just said not yet. I think, yeah.
Yeah.
There's definitely I put a post up earlier on regard to this, and I people live and die by the decisions. I'm not getting personal, but if people in them positions, so there is something called there's a what happens is the local authorities, they clump together, right? So they get together if they're a similar size or a similar type of local authority, they come together. And what they do is they create groups, and within them groups, so maybe 15, 20, 30, what they start doing is they start lobbying, which in short terms means they start asking questions and asking for things off the national government, like Keir Starmer et al. And in this, we are Barnsley, are part of a lobbying group, and that local authorities are join, and it's called SIGOMA, SIGOMA. And I've known about this for a while. Now, the chairperson of the SIGOMA interest group, which SIGOMA stands for Special Interest Group of Municipal Authorities. So it's
Yeah.
groups of
Yeah. Yeah.
authorities that are municipal, and they come together to lobby the government to say, this is wrong, or we need more money here, or social care is going down pan. Well, this Sigoma group is chaired by our council leader. So Steve Houghton,
Female.
who's our
Yeah.
council leader, is also the chair of Sigoma Group. And this is what AI responses, and I've read it before. Sigoma, the Specialist Interest Group of Municipal Authorities, is actively lobbying for changes to the Special Educational Needs and Disabilities SEND system, particularly regarding funding and control over costs. They are advocating for reforms that would limit parental rights to appeal SEND
Yeah.
assessment and reduce the powers of SEND tribunals, giving local authorities more individuality, autonomy in managing SEND services. This is in line with the broader focus on advocating for fairer funding for local authorities. So that's our council.
Yeah.
Mm.
That's
Funding.
our
Yeah.
Fairer funding. Fairer funding, not what's right for children, not what's right for families. Funding. And you know what I find really ironic and funny about this is we're a devolved council. We're a devolved council when we want to be, and we had a Tory government. You know what I mean? And now we haven't. Now we're going to go off and start lobbying the government to try. You know what I mean? It's absolute nonsense. It's nonsense. Nonsense.
but
Democracy is
this
dead in this town.
but what I feel will happen is because there's strong parents, Barnsley's full of strong parents, but like Kerry, and I've met so many. But you see, what happened is, and this is the problem, is the Send Tribunal gave parents like Kerry and so many others the hope that when they got
Mm.
out of their local cesspool
Yeah.
and went to a tribunal system,
Mm.
the due process would be followed. They'd look at the law and it'd be a fair tribunal process. That was the hope that was left in parents. That hope has stopped a lot of parents from campaigning,
Mm.
Yeah,
from
Yeah.
protesting. It stopped them because they thought to themselves, I'll work with Sendias, or I'll work with James, or I'll work with whoever, and I'll go to tribunal and they will see sense. And I'll put two fingers up at them that told me otherwise, right?
Yeah.
That
yeah,
hope, that hope is going, if not gone. So
yeah,
Yeah.
what they don't realize is that when you take hope away from people that are already desperate, let's just put it this way, they think they had a problem with the fuel allowance, right? They think
yeah,
they
yeah,
had a problem with that. There are millions of kids who are sent, and there are millions of parents who this isn't their first rodeo. The thing about it is, look at Kerry. Look at Kerry as a shining example, right? This is not someone who's green, who don't know how to write an email, don't know how to empower
Yeah.
herself. We've been put through mill since his bairns were born.
Oh, yeah.
yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah,
so we've got fight. You cut us open and there's fight in middle in us.
Yeah.
So it's not like we're not battle weary because we'll never give in, and
No.
we've already battled, and they've taken away the hope. They're taking away the hope. And then I think to myself, Jesus Christ, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
But I tell you
Chaos.
something, I've loved tonight, and it's been an absolute pleasure meeting you and talking to you, Kerry. She's gone, pause
Oh,
now.
she's gone to sleep.
That's comedy time, isn't it, that?
She's gone to sleep. She's gone.
Well,
No, I don't know. She's lagging. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, mums aren't meant to go to sleep. Yeah, yeah.
sorry, I can't hear that, James. What?
Right. So I think that's it, mate. I think we've gone, haven't we?
She's gone. Kerry's gone. Massive thank you to Kerry, and
Yeah.
we'll do it. James, are you well in yourself?
Yeah, I'm all right. I'm good.
You
Yeah, can you
sure?
hear me?
Yeah, I
Well,
can
Rich,
hear.
I don't know about my haircut.
I think considering we've just had a guest on that could deal with, we both could do with something doing with his hair, to be fair.
I know. We might have to. You never know. We might. We'll have to go that way. Right.
Might.
Thank you for that tonight, mate. Good one again. Um, yeah. The next
Well,
one.
hats off to Kerry. That's what you
Yeah,
need.
no,
They're,
absolutely.
they're,
I think to be
they're our
fair, if
fair.
anybody wants to come on, the invite is there. Just get in contact with us. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's not hard to tell the truth. That's what my dad's
Well,
always
this is
said to
it.
me.
Yeah, and I think now is the critical time. Now is the critical moment. Do you know what I mean? We've got to
Oh,
start.
it's
We've got to
coming.
start. It's never. I don't think we've got a parent voice anymore. I think we need to start screaming and shouting. You know what I mean?
It makes me so sad. It's so, so sad. But
Yeah,
our kids come first, and
they
and
do.
and
Yeah,
that's all we can focus on. If people want to
yeah.
try and take them down, then we've got to look after them.
I
Right,
agree.
Jimmy, I'm gonna go and have
Right, Johnny.
a
Oh,
sandwich.
that's it then. All right, mate. Yeah. All
See you
right. I'll
later,
speak
buddy.
to you later. All right. Have a
Bye,
good one.
everybody.